Pride is a spiritual cancer. It eats up the very possibility of love, or contentment, or even common sense. Fyodor Dostoevsky is regarded as one of the most influential writers of the last 200 years. Crime and Punishment is one of his stellar works and is often regarded as one of the greatest novels of all time. His masterpiece follows the story of Raskolnikov, a university student in St. Petersburg. Raskolnikov is a tall, handsome, and unquestionably intelligent man who was also poor, powerless, and socially marginalized. And as we'll see, he's also not a particularly good person. This story revolves around Raskolnikov's moral character, his motivations for committing an act of murder, and the intellectual justifications that both followed and preceded the act. There are many lessons to be drawn from this book, but perhaps the most prominent one is the corrupting aspect of disaffected and prideful intellect, and the gap between intellect and morality. This book is in many ways a warning to smart people, and in this video we'll be looking at why that warning is necessary and what it means for you. Intellect holds an interesting place both within the mind and within society itself. IQ is currently the best predictor of general life success that we have, and that's because life is generally complicated, and we currently live in a very complex society where things like speed of mind and problem solving are highly rewarded. And with intellect generally comes a greater self-belief in the value of intellect per se, and thus in one's own intellect, and the propensity then to correlate this with their value as a person relative to others, which is a one-way ticket to the sin of pride. Raskolnikov is an intelligent man that has, in effect, failed to capitalize on his intellect. He is without achievement, public recognition, wealth, or any good social standing at all. He believes that intelligence should naturally place him above others, that figures of great intellect are extraordinary men, as he puts it, and should, for example, be above moral law or moral norms. He even publishes an article arguing this fact, that there are ordinary people bound to regular laws and norms, and extraordinary people of great intellect who can operate outside of these norms, like Napoleon, as he likes to reference. With this kind of rationalization and framework in mind, Raskolnikov murders an ordinary pawnbroker who he sees as beneath him and a symbol of unjust oppression against him, an extraordinary man, and others like him, stealing her money as a result. To him, this was a morally justifiable act, premised almost entirely on his circumstances as an inappropriately disadvantaged intellectual. The pawnbroker herself was selected almost entirely at random. She was merely an ordinary person that was doing better in life than him, an extraordinary person. Now, this is an extreme example of how prideful intellect can contort our actions into something devilish, but it's the extremes that illuminate the more everyday aspect of the same thing. Smartness or intellect or intelligence or high IQ or whatever you want to call it tempts individuals to feel as if they should be the one people care about, whose opinions should be desired, who should be loved and respected. They are more likely to think that they always know better, and to feel as if favoring others over them in any way is foolish. And very intelligent people can become annoyed if the world doesn't lay itself out at their feet because of just how smart they are. It's this pride that leads individuals to become bitter and resentful when that isn't the case, like with Raskolnikov. We all knew kids that were like this at school. Perhaps you were one of them at school. Often a child might prove quicker and smarter than his friends in the middle stages of school and begin to believe that his intellectual success makes him better than his peers. But perhaps they're not particularly socially popular or attractive to members of the opposite sex, and their intellectual advantage lessens over time as everyone gets older. Such kids often resort to cynicism to explain why others do better than them and remain aloof while holding to their intellect as a measure of self-worth. And this cynicism, this bitterness, this resentment, being aloof is all a result of a wounded intellectual pride when people don't bow at their feet or they succeed beyond them. Raskolnikov believed intellect should be worshipped for its own sake, which is a trap that any smart, potentially prideful person can fall into. But the truth is that rationalizations about the value and the importance or the extraordinariness of intellect, they don't lead to happiness and social connection, nor do they necessarily make you a wiser person. Being an intelligent person isn't the same thing as being a wise person necessarily. And just in my personal experience, the people I've engaged with that have been the most willing to take on new ideas and opinions, particularly ones pertaining, let's say, to their own well-being, are those free of prideful intellect. They wouldn't consider themselves academic geniuses or philosophical savants. And this becomes so clear when they're contrasted with other individuals who clearly think of themselves as being smart and better than other people because of how smart they are. Their pride gets in the way and they quickly dismiss anything that would suggest that they don't know best. If anything, all their intellect does is just allows them to better reason their way out of actually listening and taking other people seriously. We should always be cautious when judging the extent of our own intellect. But we should also be cautious when judging the worthiness of that intellect and what it means about us as a person. Even if we appear smarter than another person, we shouldn't pridefully assume that this naturally means that we're right all the time. It's easy to think of yourself as being better than someone or more right than them just because, for example, you're able to talk better than them. Perhaps you're able to articulate yourself more coherently and more quickly than another person, allowing you to easily talk over them and to use that fact of being able to talk over them as evidence of the superiority of your intellectual or moral position. But of course, that isn't necessarily true. You might just be better practiced at speaking than them, or they find verbal articulation more difficult. And this is worth something keeping in mind for people who are verbally or mentally quicker. Just because you can arrive at a conclusion faster and express it more quickly doesn't automatically make you correct. It doesn't automatically mean that you are right. If you're genuinely interested in engaging in another person's opinion, if you're not just trying to, for example, win an argument, make sure you let them take the time to express themselves and don't dismiss them because you feel like you've already arrived at the destination, so to speak. Beware the pride of your own intellect and what you think you deserve because of it, and just how right that intellect makes you. In the meritocratic culture of the West, we tend to look upon people who are conscientious, industrious, hardworking, and reliable as being generally moral. We tend to socially favor them and look well upon them. However, interestingly enough, those things aside, there doesn't seem to be any discernible link whatsoever between IQ, intellect, and morality. So, being smarter does not make you a more moral person. It does not make you better, more likable, or more worthy of admiration and the love of other people. But with that stellar intellect can come the assumption that, well, because you've been gifted with that cognitive capacity and you're so smart and know so many things, and you must also naturally be a stellar moral character. How could you not be? And this is exemplified in Raskolnikov, who differentiates between ordinary and extraordinary people based on their intellect. His intellect is his whole moral justification behind the murder of the pawnbroker. His life is worth more because of it, so is worth advancing at any cost. And in part, what this demonstrates is that there is nothing worse in life than thinking that we're special, either because of our gifts or because of our traumas. Thinking we're special, which is a form of pride, robs us of our humility and encourages us to think of others as being beneath us, and stops us from listening and drawing on the wisdom of others. In the case of Raskolnikov, intellect becomes a source of ego, not understanding, and of justification, not compassion. His failure to translate intellect into success leads to bitterness and a superiority complex. He increasingly sees himself as intellectually elite but wronged by society, ultimately leading to his morality deteriorating with his conviction. His failure to translate intellect into success leads to bitterness and a superiority complex. He increasingly sees himself as intellectually elite but wronged by society, ultimately leading to his morality deteriorating with his conviction, and ultimately unable to find a place in the world where his intellect is appreciated or useful. Rather than approaching this reality with humility, he turns inward, falling into isolation and a radical moral skepticism, ultimately leading to the death of this pawnbroker, where instead a less intellectually prideful and self-concerned individual might take his circumstances for what they truly are, a measure of social and economic disadvantage outside of his control, but also a failure of his own moral character and competencies. To recognize that he is perhaps not as stellar an individual as he believes himself to be. Instead of recognizing and accepting that, even if only to work on it, the prideful intellect in him rejects all responsibility and externalizes his woes. Now, to contrast Raskolnikov, Dostoevsky presents another character, Porphyry, the investigator, who is intelligent and philosophical, but he wields his intellect with grounded psychological insight and moral seriousness. This character demonstrates a more pride-free example of intellect and humility, leading to an example of a morally aligned individual that the reader can admire and actually learn from. In combination with Porphyry, Dostoevsky uses another character, Sonia, a friend of Raskolnikov's, to illuminate how it is not intellect that creates an upstanding or extraordinary person, but rather compassion, love, and moral concern for the well-being of others. It is through Sonia and the love and compassion that she shows to Raskolnikov throughout all of these events, and ultimately a return to love and humility himself, that Raskolnikov begins his slow moral regeneration at the end of the book. And to wrap all of this up, I'll leave you with this quote. "It is not the madman who has lost his reason. The madman is the man who has lost everything except his reason." Meaning that when all we have is our reason, our rationalization, our intellect, and we lose everything else, our compassion, our humility, our courage, our love, our empathy, well, then we may as well be consumed by madness for all the good that we do ourselves and all the good that we do for others. Crime and Punishment is a study in how intellect, philosophy, pride, and moral confusion can twist a man into doing something horrifying, all while thinking it might be justified. It is an incisive take on how prideful intellect can platform feelings of bitterness and resentment and make us morally bankrupt even when we don't know it. It is a lesson in compassion and humility and encourages us to reflect on our prideful tendencies. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know by leaving a like and a comment, and subscribe for more. Thank you.